Hey everyone, Kyle Walker here. If you love cars, fixing things, or just want to understand your vehicle better, you're in the right place. I share hands-on tips, smart driving advice, and straight-up car talk without the fluff. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and stick around till the end. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Let's get into
Automatic
it.
transmission, an invention that can be called revolutionary. And although many argue that mechanics are better, in fact, if the automatic transmission cost as much as the classic mechanical analog, it would have long ago taken the leading position. We are not going to deny the fact that the automatic transmission has a much more complex design, including hydraulic, mechanical, and electronic components. But if the main factors of failure of electronics are power failures, the operation of hydromechanics is particularly sensitive to the quality, properties, and condition of the transmission fluid. However, the same can be said about all the closest relatives of automatic transmission: variators, robotized boxes, transmissions with double clutch. Since there are still rubbing parts in the automatic transmission, it inevitably leads to accumulation of products of their production. In the transmission lubricant, which are not fully settled on the oil filter, a significant part of them continues to circulate through the oil channels of the transmission. As a result, the operation of the gearbox is disturbed, which leads to various malfunctions when shifting gears. Replacement of contaminated oil does not always help to solve the problem, so automatic transmission flushing is a procedure that should be performed with a certain periodicity, and you can do it yourself, provided you know the technology and have certain equipment and tools. Why automatic transmission flushing is necessary. As noted above, in the process of car operation in the transmission lubrication system accumulates a considerable amount of various precipitates, the smallest metal chips, rubber dust, friction decay products, and other contaminants deposited on the internal surfaces of the automatic transmission, in the channels and working cavities of the hydraulic subsystem of the automatic transmission. As these contaminants accumulate, they begin to affect the performance of the gearbox, which is manifested by a gradual decrease in the comfort of using the automatic transmission. In order to prevent such troubles, many motorists resort to the procedure of automatic transmission flushing during scheduled oil change. Its essence consists in the most complete removal of accumulated dirt from the system, but it can be done in different ways, which we will talk about later. The main thing is that all of them to a greater or lesser extent help to get rid of dirt, which ultimately allows you to achieve the following benefits. Reduce the probability of breakdowns of the automatic transmission, since the repair of this unit is not a cheap pleasure. Extend the overall life of the transmission. Eliminate minor deviations in the operation of the box, if they are the result of contamination of channels and cavities of hydraulics. In the network, you can find different opinions about the usefulness of this activity, but in fact, do not question that a clean box will last longer than a dirty one. It's all about the technology of transmission cleaning. If it is imperfect, the result will be corresponding. How often the automatic transmission should be cleaned. Many motorists, to put it mildly, are not too positive about flushing the automatic transmission, and for nothing. Although specialized studies on this subject have not yet been conducted, practice shows that this event is definitely useful. But with what regularity should it be carried out? Recommendations of automakers in this regard more or less coincide at each scheduled replacement of transmission lubricating fluid. That is, every 35 to 70,000 kilometers of mileage, depending on the specific make/model of the car. In some cases, an unscheduled procedure for cleaning the automatic transmission can also be performed, associated with the following situations: appearance of problems during gear shifting, which were not observed before, if the car starts to jerk during acceleration. In case of other signs of unstable operation of the automatic transmission. If flushing did not give tangible results, then only then should proceed to the search for a malfunction in the box itself or its individual components. Preparation for flushing. It is no secret that guaranteed good results are achieved when this procedure is performed in specialized workshops. They have at their disposal expensive washing machines that allow to clean the transmission without dismantling it at a high professional level. If diagnostics of the box reveals malfunctions requiring its disassembly, it is a good way to perform flushing even more qualitatively, simultaneously with purging of hydraulic channels. But this does not mean that such work in principle cannot be performed independently. Moreover, many car owners use this method, allowing them to save a lot of money. To do this, you will need the following materials and tools. Fluid for flushing the automatic transmission, in the simplest case. The usual transmission fluid, a container for draining the wastewater, sufficient supply of soft rags, a set of wrenches, screwdrivers, a certain amount of gasoline, solar oil, kerosene, pump. A few simple recommendations. Choose a flat horizontal surface. It is very desirable to have an elevator that allows you to raise the car high enough. This will greatly facilitate the work. If the car has not cooled down yet, you should be careful. There are enough hot components in the car, including the transmission. If you are not too clear about how to wash automatic transmission at home, refer to the manual. Many manufacturers require the use of a specific product for a particular car model. And now let's move directly to the description of methods of automatic transmission flushing. Variants of simplified methods of automatic transmission flushing. Let's start with the classic method, which, although it does not require disassembly and disassembly of the box, is quite labor-intensive. It is important to buy the correct transmission oil recommended by the manufacturer. If you do not have such information, it is advisable to consult with specialists or visit the official pages of dealers, in short, to be concerned about the use of suitable oil for flushing. The procedure itself is performed in the following sequence. Old transmission oil is drained, for which the car should be warmed up. At idle speed it will not be possible to do this, so you will have to drive around the city a little. The point is that hot oil is more liquid, so it drains much better. Find the drain hole on the underside of the oil pan and unscrew the plug. It is usually a regular shortened bolt, in modern cars with a recessed head. Wait until the oil stops dripping. Remove the oil pan itself. Be careful when removing the oil pan. It is likely to have oil and dirt residue on it. Wash the oil pan inside and out with degreasing agents and wipe dry. To flush the automatic transmission, you need a pump, long hoses, and a container of sufficient volume. Duration of the procedure, from 15 minutes to an hour, depending on the degree of contamination of the automatic transmission. After flushing, you need to install a new oil filter and replace the oil pan gasket with a new one. Usually the transmission filter is located at the bottom, near the valve, and becomes easily accessible after dismantling the oil pan. The method of fixation can be different, from pawls to bolt fastening. There are also variants of installation of the oil filter outside the box body. It is better to put the gasket on the sealant, after which you can proceed to installation on the standard place of the pallet. Fill in fresh transmission fluid. Check the TM level by means of a dipstick. At the same time, the liquid should be poured slowly, without hurrying, making small pauses, constantly checking the dipstick readings. Start the power unit and let it run for a certain time. Make a short trip with the use of all modes of the box, after which you should examine it for leaks. Read also. Magnetola does not read a flash drive. Ways to solve the problem. The second method involves flushing the automatic transmission with diesel fuel. In this case, after draining the spent TM in the transmission should be poured the same amount of diesel fuel. After 2 hours, the liquid is drained, and then flushing is carried out according to the algorithm described above. This is quite an old method, which was often used to wash not only gearboxes, but also engines of cars and special equipment in times when there were no specialized washing agents yet. If you do not want to bother with removing the oil pan, there is an alternative method, a threefold filling of the cheapest version of suitable gear oil. At each of the stages, it is recommended to drive the car for a certain period of time, up to 500 kilometers, and only then pour the quality fluid. It is said that this procedure demonstrates quite decent results, as it is believed that the oil itself, clean, of course, has excellent cleaning properties. Finally, you can use dimexide or aviation kerosene to flush the automatic transmission. In this case, the algorithm is as follows. Drain the spent TM, as described in the beginning. Pour an equal amount of kerosene. It is not so easy to get it, or dimexide, means often used to clean internal combustion engines. After a 20 to 30 minute soak, drain the flushing fluid and pour in a suitable transmission oil. You can use the cheapest. Drive about 800 to 100 kilometers, and only then carefully drain the oil and pour quality fresh oil. Reviews about the work of the automatic transmission after such cleaning can be diametrically opposed, so this procedure should be performed at your own risk. Complicated cleaning of the automatic transmission. Better treatment of the automatic transmission requires its dismantling. In this case, you are given the opportunity to directly access the transmission cavities. The essence of a complete washing of the automatic transmission consists of the following sequence of actions. We drain the spent fluid. We already know how to do it. Dismantle the complete transmission. Disassemble all removable components of the automatic transmission. Thoroughly wash them in gasoline or kerosene. Blow out the transmission channels using compressed air. Replace all consumables. Filters, gaskets. Assemble the unit and install it in its original place. Fill with fresh TM. Run in the transmission in a gentle mode for a week. Note that for the solenoids of the automatic transmission, washing may not be enough. They should also be thoroughly blown. Such an event should be carried out only in cases when the automatic transmission is repaired. If there is no need for this, you can limit yourself to the usual flushing, choosing the most suitable option from those described above. Flushing the transmission radiator like the powertrain. The box during operation gets very warm and requires cooling. For this reason, the design of the automatic transmission provides for the presence of a heat exchanger that successfully copes with heat dissipation. But provided that its channels are not contaminated, because in this case its cooling capacity is sharply reduced, and the units of the box are subjected to overheating. If during oil change you find that the oil pan is heavily contaminated, this is an indirect sign that inside the radiator is not all good. That is why it is so important to know how to flush the cooling system of the automatic transmission, without which the life of the box is noticeably reduced. Usually this procedure is carried out together with flushing the transmission itself during a scheduled oil change. The most effective method is considered to be the use of special additives for flushing radiators, the basic composition of which includes a mixture of aqueous solvents and alcohols. Here is the sequence of actions. Disconnect the oil connections from the box. To the inlet, connect the hose leading to the flushing device, compressor, pump. The second lead into a container prepared in advance. If the pump is used to flush the automatic transmission, it is necessary to fill its receiving tank with solvent and pump it into the radiator through the return section of the line until the liquid does not begin to pour out of the supply section of the line, i.e., flushing is carried out from bottom to top. Then it should get into the receiving tank and move further in the cycle. Flush for about 10 to 15 minutes. The flushing fluid will get dirtier and dirtier. Change the solvent for clean solvent and rinse again. If the flushing agent is used in aerosol form, flushing is carried out from top to bottom, and the liquid should be supplied until a more or less clean solution flows from the return line. After completion of flushing, it is necessary to dry the radiator, for which we use an air compressor. Pour about a liter of clean fluid into the heat exchanger. Check the flow capacity of the radiator. If it remains unsatisfactory, the radiator should be replaced. Using a flushing agent in an aerosol package greatly simplifies the process of flushing the heat exchanger, but more qualitatively. It can be done with a pump. You can even use a manual version, not to mention a professional flushing machine. How to check the patency of the radiator after flushing. To do this, the second end of the hose of the return line should be fed to a container for collecting fluid, preferably graduated. Then pour fresh oil into the transmission in the regulated volume. Start the engine and let it idle at 1000 RPM/minute for 20 seconds. During this time, at least 1 liter of liquid should flow out of the return hose. If less, the presence of problems with automatic transmission cooling by flushing the radiator has not been eliminated. Automatic transmission hydrolock flushing hydroblock is one of the main components of any automatic transmission, and any malfunction of it means the presence of problems in the operation of the entire transmission. Physically, the hydroblock is a metal valve plate with a fairly complex internal geometry, which contains a large number of smaller parts and assemblies, channels, valves, at least 4 solenoids, many measuring devices/sensors. It is the hydroblock that ensures the normal functioning of the clutches and friction clutches, so it is so important to monitor its condition and perform all routine maintenance. This includes flushing, which is usually performed during oil change with disassembly of the unit. Before you independently flush the automatic transmission hydraulic block, you should prepare the following consumables and working tools: new oil filter, gasket of the hydraulic block and automatic transmission sump, fluid pressure regulator, sealing ring for the filler neck, fresh transmission oil in the amount of 10 to 12 liters, carb cleaner, gasoline solvent galocha, 5 liters, a pair of brushes with a stiff pile, a sufficient amount of soft, lint-free rags, spacious container. Read also, self-made illumination for the gear knob on the car. All work should be carried out in a perfectly clean place, because getting small debris in the nodes of the hydraulic block will negate the results of your work. Algorithm of dismantling and disassembly of the transmission hydraulic block. Unscrew the drain plug of the box. You may need a wrench of a non-standard shape, for example, the star type. Drain the lubricating fluid into the prepared container. Tighten the oil pan plug. Dismantle the sump itself. It is fixed with ordinary bolts. Remove the plug covering the electrical connector. Disconnect the connector by turning the plastic latch lock. Proceed to dismantle the hydraulic block, first unscrewing the bolts holding the rear and front parts of the block. Carefully dismantle the circuit board. Unscrew the other bolts and carefully remove the small sub block. Slowly, being extremely careful, lift the first intermediate plate of the GB and do the same with the rest. Care is necessary to prevent the springs from falling out. Remove the rods. Now you can start flushing the hydraulic block. We already know what is used to flush automatic transmissions. In this case, we use carb cleaner, a very common and effective means for cleaning carburetors. We disassemble the hydroblock, carefully brush all parts, and then wipe with our washing liquid. When working with carb cleaner, it is necessary to observe safety measures. Wear protective glasses and rubberized gloves, because the liquid getting on the open skin areas can lead to local burns. Special attention should be paid to washing solenoids and valves, after which remove the residues of cleaner with a dry rag and lubricate the parts with gasoline. Assemble and install the GB in reverse order. Make sure that when tightening the 4 bolts the force was about 11 Newton meters, so without a torque wrench it is better not to perform this operation. As soon as the hydroblock is in place, you can proceed to remove the old layer of sealant from the crankcase and apply a new one. Put the sump in place, screw it on, fasten the selector drive, and pour fresh TM. Start the engine, let it run at idle for some time, until the oil flows throughout the entire hydraulic block. Alternately move the selector lever to all positions with a time delay of about 15 to 25 seconds. Automatic transmission filter flushing. The built-in system of oil cleaning in automatic transmissions is two-level, a magnetic filter. Installed in the oil pan is responsible for getting rid of metal contaminants. The same system is used on many modern models for cleaning engine oil. The oil filter, usually mounted on the automatic transmission control valve, is responsible for cleaning the oil from other contaminants. It is either a fine mesh screen or made of paper or synthetic filter media. To get access to both filters, it is required to dismantle the box pan. Already by the appearance of the filtering elements, you can easily determine how contaminated the transmission fluid is, and a specialist can even indicate with a sufficient degree of certainty which part of the transmission was the most worn and requires repair and restoration work. At home, this is the only way to diagnose the condition of the automatic transmission, and it is understandably far from ideal. More informative is considered to be the examination of the automatic transmission in the conditions of service stations, where specialists, using special equipment, are able to provide the following diagnostic procedures: checking the level of linear pressure in the oil line, functioning of the automatic transmission pressure regulator, operability of controlling electronic valves. But maintenance operations, replacement of filters, cleaning of valves, oil change, can be carried out in garage conditions. Oil filters used in automatic transmissions can be divided into 2 categories: reusable products, which can be cleaned and reapplied, and disposable, which are not subject to regeneration. Of course, the resource of disposable filters is much longer. It is recommended to change them at each scheduled replacement of the TM, that is, approximately every 40 to 50,000 kilometers. Disposable filter elements are installed in many front-wheel drive models of Japanese cars Mitsubishi and Mazda, which came off the assembly line in 1990, on Mercedes-Benz cars and on the majority of overseas cars. Thus, if we are talking about Americans and Japanese, the search for original filters can be fruitless. Reusable products use a fine mesh screen framed by a rigid frame as a filter element. Most car owners limit themselves to washing the mesh in a tank with a strong solution and subsequent blowing with compressed air. More advanced craftsmen are not lazy to unroll the filter, take out the metal mesh, and subject it to a more thorough cleaning and washing, including the treatment of internal cavities. It should be noted that many ATCs today use equipment that allows you to change the oil and clean the automatic transmission by suctioning the lubricating fluid through the socket for measuring the oil level in the box, the one where the dipstick is located. However, due to non-compliance with the technology, the effect of such treatment often does not meet expectations. The fact is that each operation of refilling the transmission fluid is accompanied by the start of the engine, which usually works for a maximum of 10 minutes, and in a stationary position, supposed to travel 100 to 150 kilometers. This is not enough for complete mixing of the fluid. Thus, a part of fresh oil is sucked out during the second and third changes. The obvious disadvantage of this method is the impossibility to assess the condition of filter elements, which allow to judge about potential transmission malfunctions. Unfortunately, in this case, it is impossible to get rid of the heaviest fractions of pollutants accumulating at the bottom of the sump. So the possibility of checking the pressure level is leveled out by the above disadvantages, which can be excluded when independently flushing the automatic transmission. Automatic transmission torque converter flushing. Unfortunately, cleaning the hydraulic transformer without opening the bagel is an operation that is obviously ineffective, if not useless. After cutting the housing, all the internal parts of the torque converter become available, which can be evaluated for defects. After checking, cleaning can be started, and first of all attention should be paid to the following GT components: turbine blades, parts of the clutch mechanism, oil seals/sealing rings. After cleaning, all parts are put in place, and the housing is welded. At the same time, the quality of the welded seam must be perfect, i.e., provide complete tightness. As for the aesthetic appearance, everything is individual. It is clear that specialists of the service center can perform all these operations in compliance with the technology and more qualitatively. But if you have experience in such works, if your qualification of a welder allows you to restore the integrity of the torque converter housing without compromising its appearance, why not use garage repair? After all, in this case, you will save a weighty part of the family budget, which can be used for other more important purposes. In conclusion, while automatic transmission flushing can be a beneficial maintenance task, it's essential to approach it with caution and knowledge. Understanding the specific requirements of your vehicle, using the right tools, and following proper procedures can make a significant difference in the outcome. Remember, if you're ever in doubt, consulting a professional is always a wise choice. By taking the time to learn and prepare, you can ensure your transmission remains in optimal condition for years to come. Thank you for watching, and happy driving.